All right, welcome back. This is part 3 of our Layout with Floats lesson. In this lesson, we're going to work a little bit more with our content here. We're going to add a navigation bar, working navigation bar, that will change when you hover your mouse over the little buttons. And we're just going to just kind of clean everything up and make it all pretty. All right, let's get started. First things first is we're going to create a nav bar right between the header and our content area section. Right. So remember, in our last lesson, the header was one div that we have that contains this content. Then we have a content area div, which is everything but between these two borders, that contains a main area div and a sidebar div. And those names, main area and sidebar, those are our class names. That's how that's the kind of names we give our HTML and our CSS to allow us to manipulate those things. And then finally, we have a footer div down below. And all of those are wrapped in a container div, one big box, which allows us to, and each one of those divs allows us to change something different about what's going on here. The container div allowed us to center and provide a maximum width. The header div allowed us to space this content here. The content area div allowed us to add borders and give these two divs a chance to float off of each other. And then finally, the footer div is just by itself, and we can manipulate what this text looks like down here. A lot less work than having to manipulate each and every tag in your website, right? That's the magic of CSS. All right, so let's get going with putting this nav bar in. You're going to need basically a nav bar. When you put it in, it's an unordered list. It's that UL tag that we've learned about before. Basically a list of different items that you're going to then manipulate through CSS to look like every other website that you've seen, with very cool side-by-side buttons that you can click to get other places. All right, I'll show you how to do it. Here we go. We want to put that navigation area in between our header, this here, and our content area header or div. Okay, so we're going to put it right in there. It's going to go right in between here, between this bit of text and this border. All right, so here we go. So up in my HTML, I want to, first off, I'm going to create a nav, a div, but with the name nav, and we don't need to give it a class name of nav, although we're going to give it a class name. But nav is an acceptable HTML5 div name. It's just a different type of div that allows the web designer, you, to know what's going on. Okay, so we're going to do nav, give it a class, and we're going to call it, we'll call it site nav. Okay, remember to put quotes, site nav. Okay, simple enough. There we go. And then underneath, we'll put our closing tag so we don't forget it. Okay, we're ready to put something in there. We're going to put in an unordered list. Unordered list is a bullet list, UL, and then OL, ordered list, is a numbered list. For this exercise, we're going to put in an unordered list. That's typically how navigation areas get created. All right, and along with the unordered list, you got to have list items. Okay, an unordered list basically tells the browser, hey, we got a list and we got to have a whole bunch of bullets around these things, but until I put in list items, we don't know what that's going to look like. All right, so there's our bullet. You can see it down there. Okay, that works, but it's waiting for me to put something in here. Because of these are going to be linked, we're going to have to put in anchor tags, right? That's going to tell the browser what to do when someone clicks on these. So we do our anchor tag, and then of course we need to give it an hyperlink reference, href, equals. And I'm just going to put in a hashtag right now. Later on, you can put a different web page for it to click to, but this is just going to be a placeholder for right now. It's just going to say, I'm going to add this again later. So don't worry about anything like that. Put our angle bracket on, and there we go. Finally, we need what kind of text we want to show on the web page. In this case, I'm going to do home. And then, of course, I have to end, because we started with list item and we then finished our start tags with a, or anchor tag. I'm going to have to end the tags with a. So you start with one and then you finish with the other. Okay, and then angle bracket list. There we go. And down below, we have a linkable list item. So here's our bullet. Here's home. It's underlined. It's just the default setting to show that it's a clickable item. I'm going to put 4 more in there. And instead of touching all that, typing out all that code, I'm going to hit copy, return, 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 paste, paste, paste. And then I'll just go back in and change these names. I'm going to say, we'll say about, and then we'll say portfolio, and then we'll say contact us. Okay, there we go. Just simple stuff. And down below, you can see that's exactly what I typed in. Okay, so we have our unordered list. Great. Now, how do you make it so that it's a navigation bar? Well, I will show you. First thing we need to do is we need to get these that are side by side instead of stacked. And what we mean by that is these are block elements, and we want to make them inline, which means they're side by side instead of stacked. Okay, and the way we do that is let's get rid of the bullets first. So we'll go over to, we're going to have to call it out in CSS. And because I'm a control freak, I like going up and putting my stuff in where it makes sense on the page. So right after header and right before content area, I'm just going to hit well, because we're doing a class, we're going to do site nav. Okay. But I want to get rid of the bullets, and each of those bullets is part of the list item, each of the list items. So I'm going to have to call out site nav, and then what about the site nav? What about in that box, the site nav called box, do I want to change? Well, I want to change each of the list items. Okay, so I'm going to do list item for there and call that out, that tag. And then I want to do list style, none. So I'm telling it no bullets, don't do anything, just none. Okay, and there go our bullets. And then, because I want to get them side by side, we're going to use our float command again, left. Haha! Okay, it worked. But look what happened. It wonked it all up. So we learned in the last lesson that when we use float in one area, we need to clear it in another area so that everything else works the same. So we've already written or pasted the code, this group code, which clears floats automatically. All we have to do is add this class name to some of our HTML, something in our HTML. Okay. And the way I'm going to do that, because it's our unordered list that this is in, I'm going to add it to our UL. So our unordered list class, give it the designation of group. And it clears away. So these list items are children of this UL tag. So these tags are children of this UL tag. This UL tag is what all of these are living into, or inside of rather. And by putting group as the class name here, it's taking this clear float code and applying it for everything after it exists. So that's how that works. Not sure I explained that very well, but take it for granted. If you type that in the way I just typed it in, it will work. Okay. Let's go ahead and we want to remove any default padding or margins or anything, just like what we did with our header options. So I'm going to go over to back up to our unordered list here. Move that down a little bit. We're going to go site nav. Okay, we got our site nav stuff, but this time I'm going to call out site nav unordered list. Okay, so now we added a CSS, a class name to our unordered list because we already had a group name, a class name that allowed us, that it's taking the clear float code and applied it to the UL. But this time, I'm calling out site nav UL specifically. So I'm calling out a tag inside a div with this class name. Okay. I'm sorry if it's a little confusing, but that's what we're doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of the margins. So margin 0, padding 0. that then removes anything default that's going on that the browser may want to implement. All right. So now let's get some space between our nav bar and our this subheadline here. Okay. We want to go to now. This time, what we're going to do is we're going to call out the site nav, our nav div specifically with the class name of site nav. All right, curly bracket. And we're going to give that a margin top of 20 pixels. See what I did there? Curly bracket. Oop. Curly bracket. There we go. Site nav, curly bracket, margin top, 20 pixels. Great. All right, here we go. We have some space. Isn't that awesome? We're going to get rid of the underline of these links. Now, this underline comes about because it's a browser default for anchor links. And as you can see up here in our list item, each list item has an anchor link tag within it that customizes this text in order to be clickable. But the default setting is to make this underlined by using this tag. So we're going to get rid of that, but we're going to have to call out again in site nav because this is where the anchor tags are, and you do a. Okay. So we're doing all of the anchor tags within the nav div with the designation of site nav. We're going to call these out. Curly bracket. Text. Ooh, there go the underlines. Okay, very cool. And because I don't like that blue, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it a color. And I think I'm going to give it maybe that background color. So hashtag, and again, use your color picker to find what you want, or look in your code somewhere if you want to use that. All right, it's nice green, very cool. And finally, we're going to give these things some spacing and a border. So I'm going to put in padding, 10 pixels, 20. Now what I could do is this. Let's talk about this real quick. So do padding top, 10 pixels, and I'm going to do padding bottom, 10 pixels. Okay, that's great. I'm going to do padding left. We'll do 30 pixels, and padding right. We'll do 30 pixels. Boom. Okay. So this created some padding on the top and the bottom, and the left and right. And I'm also going to add a border here. And just stay with me for a moment, and you're going to see what happens when why you don't see immediately some spacing issues here. And it's because something we're going to talk about in a second. But I'm going to put a border on these things. Border 3 pixels, solid, and I'm going to do this this really nice border color that we did up above. Let me see if I can find it. That one. So this is that kind of light shade green. Okay, up there. There we go. Now you can kind of see that we got some issues here. This border and the text is sitting okay, but what's going on is that because these are inline elements now, they're not, the border around here isn't influenced by any of these stackable block elements. So there are two types of elements in websites. One are block elements, which are stackable, and then one are inline, which are just they just flow along one line, and they really don't influence what's going on above or below. So we're going to have to fix that in order to put these together. Now we made our sorry, we had some technical issue there. We made our site nav as an inline element by putting our list style and our float in there, right? So now what we're going to have to do now is make a part of this a block element again. And because our border around here is directly attributed to our anchor tag, we're going to have to mess with this a little bit in order to make that work. So I'm going to go ahead and put in here display block. There we go. So this takes this. It's not influencing our list item or our UL at all because we made those inline. What it is doing is like taking this anchor tag and making that a block item so that these stay inline and the spacing above below it, it's recognizing it a block and it will influence so it stacks right. Okay. Let's see. What we're going to do, if we have the padding. So the padding helped us with the spacing between our border and the text. I'm going to take these down to 20. I'm going to show you a little shorthand because typically what happens is you can have all of this code just to designate one element, right? CSS allows us to shorten things a little bit, and it works kind of like a clock. So top is at 12 o'clock, and that's what comes first. If you think like the top of an hour, that's where it starts. And the browser will look at padding top. That's the first measurement it'll look at. It'll look at 10 pixels. Then it's going to look at left, or right rather, which is at 3 o'clock, and that's going to be 30 pixels. And then it'll look at the bottom at 6 o'clock, and then left. So if you think of it as the face of a clock, it's like top is at 12, and then your hands go over and they go to the right, and then they go to the bottom, and then they point left, and then they go back up to the top again. So I'm going to wipe all of this out, and I'm going to put in, you can just it will do it in clockwise order. So top, and then left, or right rather, bottom, and then left. And there we go. We can shorten this up a little bit more even by, oops, I forgot the colon. There you go. Okay, so 10, 20, 10, 20. You can kind of see what's going on here, 10, 20, 10, 20. If I wanted, because it's the top and the bottom are the same, and the left and the right are the same, I can shorten that to just two of them. And now this means 10 pixels is top and bottom, 20 pixels is left and right, and it's the same thing. Okay, just to clean up your code a little bit if you want to do that. All right, now to put some space in between each of these list items, I'm going to have to go up and modify the list here. And so what I want to do is margin right. I don't want to do margin left because it'll influence everything over here. So margin right, we'll do 5 pixels. Let's do 10 pixels. And that spaces that out a little bit. You can do whatever size you want. You can do 20. We'll space it out a little bit. Okay, whatever you want to do. Okay. Finally, what we want to do is I don't like how this bottom border it kind of looks like there's a double line here. And I'd like these buttons to sit on the border rather than bump it up. So we're going to get rid of the bottom border of each of these buttons. Okay. So we had the border as part of our anchor tag designation. And so here's my border. I'm going to add one more, and I'm just going to get rid of bottom one. None. There we go. Looks a lot cleaner. Okay. Finally, let's add a hover effect to these buttons. Okay. They're clickable now, and you see my mouse cursor changes from an arrow to a little index finger every time. But it'd be a lot better if these did something a little more, if we would have done that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to call out yet another site nav rule in CSS. And it's still going to be an anchor tag, but this is a special code to allow anchor tags to change to whatever you want them to. And it's just going to be colon hover curly bracket. And this is basically telling the browser what I want the anchor tags to do when I hover a mouse cursor over it. I'm just going to do background color. And we're going to do that kind of sagey, light sagey color. Okay. And now if I hover over this, now it changes color. Lots of things that you can do. In fact, I could change the text color to white. I think that'll work. Yeah. There you go. Very cool. So a little bit of an animation there just to make it look a little special. And that's kind of it. We went from a very kind of boring, basic CodePen document to something that's a little nicer to look at. I hope this was useful. If you have any questions, just reach out to me on Teams, and we'll see you soon.